Good evening. Welcome to tonight's shir. This is Thursday of Parshas Matos Maseh, Chazak. Today's shir is dedicated in honor of the Yortzeit of Rus Zissel Bas Yitzchak Olav Shalom, sponsored by her brother Tzelanger Yor Reb Tzvi Mitz. So thank you for your sponsorship. And if anyone else wants to sponsor, the email is diane@thebabbittUK.com. And if you want to be in touch, it's £50 a week. That pays for the uploading to Rimazak and many other people. So here we go. We're going to go in the first question which we have for tonight. And that is, why do we say Hoidu before Baruch She'omar, unlike Nusach Ashkenaz, which have Baruch She'omar first and then Hoidu comes after? And after all, Hoidu is Tehillim largely. I know it's from Divrei Hayomim, but it's Tehillim style. So wouldn't it make more sense that it's going to be together with the Psukei de Zimra after Baruch She'omar? So here we have on the screen from the Shar HaKoilel, who writes, this is Perik Hey, he writes that we do Hoidu Mizmor Shir, Chanukas, Hashem Melech, Hashienu, and he says that these should be said before Baruch She'omar. Now look at that. Mistama lefi Arizal, that is assuming that according to the Arizal that they were instituted after the Anshe Knesset Agdola. Yeah. So here's a historical fact. Who instituted saying Hoidu every day? So he's making an assumption that it's post Anshe Knesset Agdola, according to the Arizal, and therefore there's a problem of hefsek with stuff which it's not from the original takona, because between Baruch She'omar and Yishtabach, you're not allowed to interrupt with things which were not you're only allowed to say stuff which was instituted by Anshe Knesset Agdola, because there's a Baruch Hashoina, Baruch Hashoina. So he's making 2 points here, if I may say. First of all, he's asserting that Hoidu is not an institution of the Anshe Knesset Agdola. Once he has that, then he says, well, then it becomes a problem of hefsek between Baruch She'omar and Yishtabach, and therefore say Hoidu before. So someone brought it to my attention this week. And actually in the Siddur I quoted this Shara Kaidel, and I've always been under the impression the reason why we don't say Hoidu after Baruch She'omar, because it's a later innovation and it's introduced later, and there would be a problem of hefsek. So someone sent me it's my brother-in-law, Rabbi Yossi Alperovich, who's published 10 volumes called Or HaTfilah, where he's collated from all Chassidus Chabad comments and explanations on the davening, and the 10th volume is somewhere on for Krishma Shel Shachris or something like that. But meanwhile, he's looking into this, and he sees a Lashon of the Alter Rebbe in a Maimah. You can see it's a Maimah Tovkov Samar Gimel, which actually is remarkable that this is the year when the Siddur officially was published by the Alter Rebbe, Tovkov Samar Gimel. And he says the following: Hoidu Lashem Kiru V'Shmoi, Pirush V'Inyan shall say Shesidru Anshe Knesset Agdola Loimar Hoidu Tchilo V'Achakach Psukei de Zimra. So here there's a Maimer news that saying Hoidu was instituted by Anshe Knesset Agdola, and they instituted to say it before Psukei de Zimra. So unlike what the Shar HaKoilel, Rav Lavut, who had said it's a later innovation, the Alter Rebbe here in this Maimer is saying that actually it was Anshe Knesset Agdola, and Heim Omru to say it before Baruch She'omar, which we're going to hopefully have some explanation for that. But meanwhile, his whole assertion that the reason why we don't say Hoidu after Baruch She'omar is because it's a late innovation and it's a Chash of Hefsek, all of that the chayra falls away. Now, just in case you think it's a one-off mention, you say how mugi is the mimer. Here we have from the Mittler Rebbe, Alter Rebbe's son, and we have here in Teres Chaim where he writes the similar loshen, says the similar, and this is written. It was written by Shmuel Sofer, I think, but okay. Hine lozois tiknu anshe knesses agdoyle behoidu posig v'uraya al kein tiknu hoidu koidem boch sha'om alaf inusach Arizal. So we have here two sources at least in Chabad Chassidus which are attributing hoidu to anshe knesses agdoyle and the placement of it before boch sha'om, also from anshe knesses agdoyle, contrary to what the Shar HaKoil had said. Now, I'm going to show you another comment of the Shar HaKoil, because what we have is, on the weekday, we have Hoidu and a couple of other bits and pieces. On Shabbos, we have a whole 10, we have Hashamayim Mesaprim, and Radon and Tzadikim, and Adov Shanoisoi, and Tfilah Lamoshe, and Yeshiv Seiser, and then you have Mizmor Shel Hashem and Shel Chodosh, and then 4 Shel Amalis, and then Hallelujah, and then this Hoid Hashem Kitov Kilim Chasti. I didn't keep count. It's about 12 Mizmorim, whatever. So we've got a whole list, and again here, Ashkenaz say first Baruch She'omah, and most of that list is said after Baruch She'omah, with exception, I think, Mizmor Chanukah, as we said before, and by us, by Nusach Sfardis, I say all of those before Baruch She'omah. So in Perik Yud Tes and Shar HaKoilel, he's addressing the Shabbos Seder, and here he writes the following: that there is this question depends on the two lashonos in Zohar in Parshas Truma Kuflam Zayin Amud Beis. Now read those words carefully. V'askino chavrayo sheruso de tashbachta. The chavraya, the colleagues, instituted a beginning of sheruso can be the beginning of introduction to praises of Shemayim Mesaprim. Svorim acherim v'askino knesses hagdoilo besiduro de tashbachta. That this institution of saying Hashamayim Mesaprim of Shabbos is the institution of Anshe Knesses Agdola. So we've got two Lashonis in the Zohar. Who instituted Hashamayim Mesaprim? Chavraya, Anshe Knesses Agdola. Okay, so now we'll see that in a moment, more in detail. V'yodua, that the Zifra Zohar was copied out by hand, and the Arizal was Magia. He checked them over. Ve'imkein nira, that the Arizal kiyemes hagirsa, it was the Arizal who approved the girsa to say ve'eskinu chavraya, that they are instituted by the chavraya, not by the Ashkenaz Gedolah, and therefore they should be said before Baruch She'omah. This is all his because of a hefsek. Now, I want to share with you, I know this is not regular kind of reading material. The Zohar was printed in two cities in Italy, close to one another, Cremona and Mantua. The one printed in Cremona was very tall, like a ledger type of print, and the one printed in Mantua is more like the kind of Sforim which we're more familiar, the smaller, like a Siddur size. But one was in Shin Yud Tes in Cremona. This is before the Arizal was born. And the one in Mantua, as you can see, is Shin Yud Ches. So approximately the same time. So here we have Va'askinu Chavrayo Sherusa de Toshbachti, Hashamayim, and both have the same lashon. Va'askinu Chavrayo Sherusa de Toshbachti Mi'inu Tushbechon de David do Hashamayim. Okay, very good. So this is an institution. I'm going to look at the chats in a moment. So this is institution. This is written in the Zohar. It's an institution from Chavraya. Now here's the Zohar which I use regularly, published with the comments of Reuven Margolis by Moshe Rav Kook, and he has the following. Look at here we have Vaskinu Then it goes Anshe Knesses Agdola, Svorim Achem Agdola, and we have Or Chavraya. So you got the two Girsois. And that's what Rav Lavut is seeing. He sees there's two versions in the Zohar. He jumps to the conclusion that it was the Arizal who said to say Hashemayim Asapim before Baruch Shama buys the Girsa of V'yaskinu Chavraya. So I'm absolutely curious here. So I find an earlier Zohar in between. A Zohar printed in Amsterdam, Tov Ein He. This is approximately 150 years after the Arizal. And here you can see where the correction was inserted. As you can see in the main text, it says Vaskino Chavraya Sherusa. That is the same Lashon as it was in the earlier one from 150 years earlier. And then we've got on the margin, Anshe Knesses Agdoilo, was instituted by Anshe Knesses Agdoilo. So here we've got a change, yeah, someone wrote that. So I looked at the beginning of this Zohar, Tfus Amsterdam, to trace who is responsible for making those notes. And it says that they are from the Arizal. As a sefer called Derech Emes, printed in Venice in the year Tov Chof Gimel. Yeah, is that right? Ches and Hey is 13. Yeah, it says Tov Chof Gimel. Just about 90 years after the Arizal, is printed a small volume called Derech Emes, and it's got commentaries of the Arizal, corrections to the Zohar. And here we see in the Derech Emes, Va'askinu Anshe Knesses Agdoilo Sidura. So who is responsible for that note is actually the Arizal. So just the opposite of what Rav Lavut was saying, that the Arizal subscribed to the Girs Vaskinu Chavrayo. Now we're seeing that the Arizal actually changes in the Zohar, and he says, no, Hashemayim Esaprim is the institution of Anshe Knesses Agdoilo. Okay. Why is it before Baruch Shama? It's a different story. In other words, Rav Lavut had made two assumptions and come to a conclusion. I beg to differ. That you can see clearly the Arizal attributes them to an Anshe Knesses Agdola, and that will be for Shabbos, and I'm assuming also for the weekday for Hoidu. As you can see in the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, that Hoidu is institution of the Anshe Knesses Agdola, and yet it has to be before Pesukah de Zimra. Why? No, that's another question. But not because of a hefsek, because it's a later innovation. No, it's actually early. It's from Anshe Knesses Agdola. In case you have any doubt about that, so my brother-in-law sent me also today that you have Masechah Sofrim, but it's a little bit not so straightforward. Both texts are the same. By the way, if you can see here Kisei Rachamim, I always like to throw in this side information. Kisei Rachamim is a work of the Chidah, as you can see, and he wrote a volume on Maseches Kalo, Maseches Sofrim, and Obas de Reb Nosson. So that's the Kisei, Kalo, Sofrim, Obas. So he in that volume, that's called Kisei Rachamim. But this is another same nusach be'erech. The Agro has a change on it, but fine. Tzrichin loymar after he chvoid you should say v'acharav hoyd l'Hashem kiru v'shmoi and sheishes hasam izmoirim shel kol yoim. Sheishes izmoirim means ashrei through the Hallelujah till the end of Hallelujah, till the end of Tilim. But so you have here already in the Masechah Sofrim, which is the time of the Gemara approximately, we have the idea of saying hoidu. But you're going to ask, it says after Yichvoid, it's not the Seder which we have, admit it. But the concept of saying hoidu on a daily basis is already mentioned in Masechah Sofrim. Fine. Just if I'm keeping you in suspense, okay. That's part of the fun, isn't it? So now let's take a look at Shulchan Aruch. Here in Shulchan Aruch says, Tiknu loima psuke de zimra b'chol yom. Tiknu. Anshe Knesses Agdola, yeah? It's an early takon. V'yesh mekoyim is shenoyagin lehoysiv haidu l'Hashem. Minig. And that's on the weekday. Then come to Shabbos. V'noyagin laharbois bizmiris shel Shabbos. Psuke de Zimra lamnatseach hashemayim. Well, all I can say is the way it's written in Shulchan Aruch, that's according to the Girsa in the Zohar of Yaskinu Chavraya. It's a later innovation, and that's a Noyagin, perhaps, possibly. But according to the Girsa of Askinu Ashkenes Sagdaila, so these are earlier takonas from Ashkenes Sagdaila. Okay, but so we're seeing here two historical sources which are not necessarily the same. Fine, that's okay. Then you're asking the question: if it's take a baruch that Hoidu was instituted by Antigonus Sagdoila and Hashemayim, the which we had on Shabbos for Antigonus Sagdoila, why before Baruch Shom, when after Baruch Shoma? So then, really, you have to go back a little bit. Why are you saying Hoidu every day? Who instituted Hoidu? I know it's got a very similar chapter in Tilim. Where's it? Kuvov around there, Kufay, somewhere around there. But it's actually from Divrei Yomim. And the way it's written in Chazal is that this Mizmor was instituted by David HaMelech to be said in the presence of the Mizbeach when Korban Oilo or Korban Tomid. And the first part, till Novivi Al Toreu, I think, was to be said with the Tomash Al Shachar, and from Shir Al Shem Shel Chodosh till the end was to be said in the Tomash Al Ben Arbaim. So this was instituted by David HaMelech, but that was for his time, for the 43 years until the Beis Hamikdash was built. It may not have been necessarily carried on later, but the Hoidu Lashem Kir Vishmei, which we have, is associated with the Karbanos. Now, the pre-Shacharis section we call Karbanos. Then we've got Psukkah de Zimra, which are praises of Hashem. Now we've got a praise which has got to do with Karbanos. Where does it belong? Does it belong with Karbanos, or does it belong with Psukkah de Zimra? It's somewhere in between. And therefore, it's after the Kaddish, the Rabbanon. It's already part of Psukkah de Zimra, but it's before Baruch Shoma because it's got association with Karbanos. Now, I'm just saying that on very simple language. Let me just come back a second. Right, let's not get too complicated. Here we have on the screen from the sources in the Arizal in Pri Etz Chaim, in two places, which actually Rav Lavut refers to. And in these two places, it's explaining how you've got the four olamis of Asiya, and then Yetzira, and then Bria, and then Atzilus. Korbanos, until Haidu, is related to Olam HaAsiya. Psukkah de Zimra, related to Olam HaYetzira. Krishma is related to Olam Bria, and Shmonesra related to Olam HaAtzilus. I'm not going to go too much about this. We can perhaps discuss it. We have discussed it before. There's a sulam, there's the ladder going up. Hine malach elikim oilim v'yordim bois. Sulam is tefillah is a sulam, is a ladder. And the way it's explained in the Kisvei Arizal is that the tikkunim, that which needed to be accomplished in Karbonos, is not complete. There's some aspects which are still incomplete, and those are completed by Hoidu, and therefore Hoidu is it's still in a way finishing off the business of Olam HaAsiya, yet it is connected to the Zmiris of Psukkah de Zimra. Because of this, it's got this interesting position. It's before Baruch She'oma, but it's part of Psukkah de Zimra, and yet it's also part of Korbanos. So if you want to read up more in Kabbalah language, it's there. But so it's got nothing to do with Hafsaka, with Hefsik. It's got to do with much more on a Kabbalistic level, why we're saying this part as before Baruch Shoma, because it's still associated to Korbanos to some degree. I'm going to now look at the chats. I hope I can handle it. Someone says, anyone got audio? I hope that's been resolved. What about all the psukim following the Tilim of Psukkah de Zimra, or later Psukkah de Zimra is after the close of the Gemara. Okay. Sofrim is from after the Gemara. Okay. Right. Let's move on. Fine. So meanwhile, coming back to our original question, why do we say Hoidu before Bar Shama? So the answer is, according to yours truly, not to do with Hefsik. It's got to do with a more Kabbalistic association. Practical consequence of this. If you are a Lubavitcher man and you are a chazan or a rabbi in an Ashkenaz community, and you're davening at the Yomid, that's maybe part of your job, do you have to be concerned about Hefsik? I would say no. What if you wanted to dafka keep to the Seder of the Arizal, you could say Hoidu quietly before, you could say Hoidu or Hashemayim Masap and all those things, you could say before, and then afterwards you could say Baruch Shama with it as a beginning of the formal davening. And if you say those other kapitelach afterwards, it's not a concern of Hefsik. Now, to say that, and this whole thing that it's a concern of Hefsik because it's not a concern of Shekhinah, well, certainly Nishmas is not from Anshe Knesset Gdola. It's associated to, those who say it's written by someone called Shimon. Some say Shimon Meshotach, some say another Shimon. At any rate, it's not clear that it was from Anshe Knesset Gdola, and yet it's there. Oz Yoshir, according to the Rambam, Oz Yoshir is to be said after Yishtabach. We say it before Yishtabach. It's not Takonos Anshe Knesset Gdola to say it before Yishtabach, and we say it, and we don't see it as a hefsek. We're not so concerned about it. Okay, all right. And by the way, just throwing in another thing, Keil Nekomes Hashem, Keil Nekomes Yefia has got to do with clearly with the Aser Harugei Malchus, the 10 Tanoim who were killed, which is much later than Anshe Knesset Gdola, this period towards the end of the period of the Mishnah, and they are in Hoidu. No one's debating. It's added later, and yet it's not a problem for Ashkenaz. They're not saying it was Anshe Knesset Gdola, and they still say it. Yeah, okay. Let's move on. Okay. So much for all of that history. Let's move on. Next question. Someone asked a practical question. I'm running a bit late, and so I'm holding by Psukkah de Zimra, and the Chazan and the Tzibur are saying Hashem Hashem Kei Rachem V'Chana. Should I join in with them or not? So this question is addressed in the Sefer Tehillah David, Ravim Barditchev, from about 180 years ago, approximately, let's say, Rabbi David Ortenburg. And he says, on the one hand, we have the idea that when the Tzibur is saying Yud Gimel Tzarachimim, you should be joining in. And you have the idea that you can't say it on your own. The idea of saying Yud Gimel Tzarachimim, to be Me'oire Rachamim, to arouse her divine mercy, is only to be said with a Tzibur. Therefore, if you're davening B'yochid, if you're davening B'yichidus, so you have two choices. One choice is to not say it. The other choice is to say it in a tune as if it were reading B'Torah. That's the way it's written in Shulchan Aruch and Tavkuf Samachay. That if you want to say Hashem Hashem on your own, Kekoyre B'Torah. But the idea of as a tefillah, as a arousing Yud Gimel Misrachamim, that is Dafke B'Tzibur. Now the rule for interrupting Psukkah de Zimra and even Birchas Krishma, if something is called a Dover Shebekdusha, an element of tefillah which is only done with a minyan, like Baruch Hu, like Kedusha, like Kaddish, so those things you are allowed to interrupt in Birchas Krishma and certainly in Psukkah de Zimra. On that basis, you should be allowed to respond and join in with the Gimel Zerachim. But then he backtracks on that and he says he doesn't see it as, although that is the common minhag, he sees it more on the level of minhag and not a chiyuv. And secondly, he says that possibly by Yud Gimel Serachmim, the main thing is that the Chazan should say it. The fact that the Tzibur should join in is not so essential. Not like Kedusha and Baruch Hu, it's responsive. The Chazan kind of prompts everyone joins it. So it's a different structure. Bottom line is, he says, you're not mafsik. You're not mafsik in the middle of Psukkah de Zimra to respond to Yud Gimel Serachim. So that remains the bottom line. We're going to go on to our next question. So one of our dedicated listeners has asked me for a while to weigh into the story about opening containers, drink cartons, etc. on Shabbos. And this listener kindly provided me a whole range of cartons which have been opened and unopened, etc. So as you can see on the screen, on the right of the screen, we have here a typical carton of apple juice. And now you're on the lower part of the screen, you can see how it looks on the inside before you've twisted the cap to tear through and make a neat opening. Now, this I've never noticed before. In this particular popsicle, cranberry juice, whatever it is, inside the white plastic cap, there's another ring, a loose ring, which is transparent plastic. And if you look carefully, it's got teeth. It's got spiky teeth. And as you twist the cap, the cap has got this slanted diagonal flap. It twists the ring, the lower ring, and that pushes the teeth downwards, and that tears through the plastic or foil, whatever it is, and makes this neat opening. So if you look carefully, you can see this. Can you see over there the plastic ring? And if you look carefully, you can see the teeth. That's this, as well as my photography worked. You can see. So that's it's especially designed to be able to create a neat opening. For that matter, we have the more common types of cartons where you will have a flap where you lift one end up and the other end of the flap is on a hinge, it swivels down, and that rips through the carton and the foil, plastic, etc. creates. And then we've got the other type, which which you can see on towards the left on the screen. I'm not sure how tight that is originally. Are you tearing through a new opening, or is it just it's sealed well? I don't know about that. I didn't manage to work that out. One more thing before then weighing into the halacha. Someone, Rabbi Yosef Lando, who goes regularly to the Coca-Cola plant in Ireland, he once brought me this lid of a Coca-Cola can before, which has never been used. And as you can see, what's significant is the following. We all know Coca-Cola cans, you've got this ring which you lift, and that pushes down the flap on the other end of the lid, and it creates an opening. Now, if you look on the inside to the left of the screen, you'll see that there's never been an opening there before. What's happening is in the factory they score the metal. They make it thinner, and so when you lift the ring on the outside, so the least resistance is going to be where the metal is being scored, and that's why it makes that opening. Okay, so that's so much for the Metzias, the fact. Now then, let's read in Shulchan Aruch in Siman Shin Yud Dalet about binyan ostira b'kelim. So we have, it says in the Gemara, in the Mishnah actually, chovis shel cheres. You've got a clay barrel. It's not a big one. It doesn't contain 40 saw. It's smaller. And it was once broken. And it was then repaired with some kind of resin. It's been stuck together. So that's in the language that Alter Rebbe doesn't bring this word. In the earlier poskim, they called it the word, Tosfos used the word mustaki, from the word of mastic. It was cracked and then stuck together. Such a unimportant barrel. Mutter l'shavra b'Shabbos. So the lashon of the Mishnah is shover odem chavis. You are allowed to break a barrel to get the contents out. So Tosfos says, well, break a barrel. Making a barrel is boinus. Demolishing a barrel is soisa. How can you break a barrel? So says Tosfos, it's talking about a mustaki. It's talking about a barrel which is not so solid. It's been broken, stuck together. Such a barrel you're allowed to break open on Shabbos by hand with a tool in order to get the contents. And why is that allowed? She'eino binyan gomer. So when the Mishnah says shoiver odom chovis, it means a weak type of barrel that you're allowed to break. Even so, the Mishnah says, "Ubelvad shelo iskaven lenakvo yanekev yofer, sheyehei lo lepesach noer." So it says the lashon of the Mishnah is shelo yichaven lasos lo peh. When you're breaking open this mustiki barrel, you shouldn't break it in a neat way to make a neat opening. So you're allowed to break a mustaki, but you mustn't make a neat opening. In understanding this mustaki, there is a debate in contemporary poskim. Is the mustaki's unimportance because of its value, or because of its strength, its rigidity, its how long it will survive? And this is where there's debate about a can, a metal tin. If you say that the heter of mustaki is because it's not important, okay, then the can is also not important. Nowadays, open a can, you throw it out. If you say that the it's more objective, that the mustaki is ein binyan gomer, it's a weak structure. So then that doesn't help you for a can, because a can is not a weak structure. It's a strong structure. I'm quite the different levels of strength of cans, but it's something which can last for years. And so on that basis, it's actually the same Tilo David objects to the opening of cans on Shabbos. So does Reb Zalman Shimon, Olav Shalom, and I was Makabel the same thing for Rabbi Heller, so Silangayar, not to open cans on Shabbos. The only way you can do, sorry about the pun, is with asking a guy. But there are those who are makel, and they say that a can also falls into the gather of mustaki because it's a throwaway. But you still have Pesach no, you shouldn't make a neat opening. So now you've got a Coca-Cola can or these other cartons. Now with the cartons, I'm more comfortable to say that they're not so durable, and therefore I would say there's a mustaki. But again, we still have the problem, not to cut a neat opening. So we have a problem with using any of these methods which are going to make a neat opening, because it says it's making a neat opening. I would say at this point that the small cartons where you put a straw through a little window of silver foil and you drink with a straw, I would be happy to say that there you're not making a pear, you're not making a neat opening, you don't care. The straw goes in whether it's this way or that. But with these cartons where you are making a neat opening, and it is important to the user because you don't want it pouring all over. So therefore, you shouldn't be opening them in a way that's tearing a new opening. It's not like opening opening a bottle, where you're not making a new opening. You're taking off a lid, but the opening was there before. Here you are creating a new opening. Therefore, it is a concern. And what you've seen here is the person has done a cut on the side. You can make a crude opening that you can be makel, but to make a neat opening is a problem. Now, coming back to the cans, even if there was no makel, there's a difference if you are drinking from the can or if you're pouring from the can into pouring it away right away. You could argue and say, if you're drinking from the can, then you want to have a neat opening. If you are pouring out the contents right away, you're not having any ongoing benefit from the can, then more reason to be makel. Or if you're using a straw, also you're not interested in having a neat opening because it makes no difference to you. So that's so much. So this is what I'm leaving you with as far as these cartons of juice to their various types. So long as you are creating a neat opening, we do have a problem. If and therefore the solution on Shabbos is just to stab it with a sharp implement with a knife or something like that, and it's taka not going to make a neat opening, it's going to make a crude opening. Just be careful, don't cut through like writing. I can see a QR code. We had a discussion some months ago about tearing QR codes on Shabbos. We're not going to go to that again now. Right. Of course, in a regular home setting, the simple solution is to open them before Shabbos, sort of to people. The question is more in shuls, it's kedushin, catering, larger numbers, where that's maybe more difficult. All right. Someone's asked, what about hinge tops? Okay, so the similar to what I'm pointing to now with the cursor, you have a type where you lift up a flap and then you rip out, there's a foil tab, and then that rips through the plastic. That's the same problem. It's again making a Pesach Noah. So I'm not happy about those. Okay, let's move on. By the way, there's a spectrum about from one to the other about all opening containers. Now, those who are very mekel and those who are very machmir. I'm a little bit to the right of the spectrum. Okay, let's move on. So now this is question number 4, and there is someone who, somewhere in London, not in the Hamish area, he put up a property for sale. And the buyer, he's got a buyer, and the buyer, however, has a chain. He says, I want to buy the house, absolutely, but I have to first sell my current home to be able to have the means to be able to buy for this home. During this delay, another buyer has come forward who's prepared to pay a higher price and to put the money down right away. Cash buyer. And here the question is it wrong for the vendor to drop the first buyer and go for the second buyer who's offering more money? This is the question. So what you can see, there's been no exchange of contracts. There's been an agreement that we're going to go ahead, but nothing has been legal. There's no been legally binding contract at all. So here we have on the screen, you have from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Afal pi she'ena mekach nigbar b'dvarim bilvad. Just verbal agreement does not bind a transaction, and after that you are allowed to retract. And then there's something called a mishapara. Mishapara is if you've made an agreement to buy and you've put down the money. There hasn't been a kinyan, which is binding lalocha, but you put down money. Then if either party retracts, then there is something called a mishapora. Be a curse for someone who doesn't keep his word. But there's less than that. There has been no kinyan. There has been no exchange of money either. It's just been a verbal commitment. One who retracts from such a commitment is considered not so trustworthy, not so honest. And it's something which is looked in the Chacham would frown upon, because a person should honor his word. As it says, She'eres Yisrael lo yasu avalo v'lo yidabru chassav. So this is the level we're talking about. We're not talking about anything binding, other than honor your word. So now here's our question. I've given my word to sell the property to Robert for 1 million, but Robert's not ready to buy it yet because he has to sell his house. Comes along Chris, and he's ready. He's offering me 1.2 million. Am I allowed to drop the first? Now, I just want to also add here, there's a term in English or American called gazumping. This is a separate shaila. There's a concept called Oni HaMahapich Becharara. There's a loaf of bread, and there's a poor person who's hungry and is reaching out with his hand to pick up that piece of bread. And he hasn't picked it up yet, and you snatch it out from under his fingers. And so that means the person's gravitating towards an opportunity. He hasn't managed to get there, and you pull it away. That's called the question of oim hapach b'charara. And there are some terms. Now, let's say, you know what? He is taka desperately hungry. I'm also desperately hungry. Is there justification to pull it out? Why is his hunger more deserving than my hunger? Okay, that's another issue. Here we have a question on that's as far as the customers, one pulling away from the other. Here we're dealing with the vendor. Is he allowed to change his mind and say, you know what, I'm going to the other customer? So here what you have on the screen is, and this is from the Piskei Choshen from Rav Loy, contemporary, passed away a few years ago. We want to have guidance in the moral level. He says, oh, you're not keeping with when things are final. Now, it is a little bit debatable, but I think the fact that someone does not have the money now until he has a buyer who's going to come buy his property, I feel that that's not considered gomru. He doesn't have the money yet. It's still pending. The agreement of his confident, he's going to sell it, but it's all, meanwhile, it's in the air. I don't think that's called Gomer B'Nehem if he hasn't got the funds ready to give right away. On that basis, I told the questioner that the vendor is allowed to go to the second buyer because the first buyer isn't ready to go right away. That was my understanding. Hopefully I got it right. Okay, let's move on. So someone told me today there was someone actually who lived on my street, Lubavitcher, which about 45 years ago, and he was selling it. His house was moving to another house, sold it to another Lubavitcher for £20,000. And before the fellow completed, someone else offered him £22,000. And he declined. He says it's already committed to sell to this other fellow. I don't know what the terms were, but la halacha, if the 20,000 buyer didn't have the money ready, he would be entitled to take the higher offer. Let's move on. So I got here what I thought was an innocuous question, and he's asking the word sukkoi in Tilim. In Tilim, ayin vov, ayi b'shalom sukkoi. Is sukkoi spelled with a vov or without a vov? And because in the Chabad Tilim, the regular Tilim which we use, it's spelled without a vov. And he's asking, how authentic is it? With a vov, without a vov? I wasn't sure that it's such a significant thing because I think the printers may not see it so significant with a vov, without a vov. Although I'll throw at you that it's okay, it's safe because it's in the with a Zoom, and you can't. If I throw something, you can't catch it. That in the word in Ketelim Kuf Zayin, Hoidu Lashem Kitoi Kila Nuchas, at the beginning of Kuf Zayin, Hoidu is spelled without a vov, Hey Dalad Vov, and the Rebbe's father says that's got to do with Sfira Sohoid. It's the beginning of the 5th volume of Tehillim. That's corresponding to Hoid, and therefore it starts off with Hey Dalad Vov, rather Hey Vov Dalad Vov. It's the only time in Tanakh Hoid probably comes up 15 times, 20 times. The only time it's spelled without a vov. Okay, so there is significance, but whether this printer was sensitive. So here you can see the two prints, both the Tehillim which we use regularly. Then we've got the Tehillim with Tzemach Tzedek's commentary, Ya'aloir. Also there it's got just with a shuruk. And then we've got another two ancient Tehillims. One is from Reish Ayin Ches, and there it's spelt without a vov. On the margins got a correction with a vov. And then we've got another one from Reish Pei Hey, and there it's spelt with a vov. So it doesn't seem to be so clear. Where would we get clarity on this? So we've got something called the Minchas Shai. I forgot what his first name was. Shmuel Nuretzi, lived in Italy about 400 years ago, and he really took to town on getting every such kind of dilemma addressed. And he says, Baharbe, that's on the top of the screen, Baharbe midiyokim, nichtav bevov imadogish. And that is also, first of all, he says that's in many more authentic sources, it's with a vav. Then in Mesorah and Yirmiyah has there another word, the word Yirmiyah Suche comes up there also, Ozak Kikfir Sukhoi, and there it's spelt without a vav, and it says something. It says Kain Ksiv Vahi B'Shalom Sukkot. We have the same word. That's what the Mesorah does. Compares the same word elsewhere, and he says Kain Ksiv. Similarly, it's written elsewhere Sukkot. And so when he uses the word Kain Ksiv, so then he says it's similar but not identical. So in Yirmiyah it's written Sukkot without a vav, and in Tehillim it's with a vav. What you have on the left of the screen is from the Sefer from Rav Shmuel Heber, Soll sein gesund. I've mentioned this many times before. 3 volumes set on Tehillim called Yashmiya Kol Tehilosoi, and he brings from the Minchas Shai how it's with the vav is more correct. So far, it seems to be just with a vav, without a vav. What's the big deal? So I was curious. Why are you so intrigued with a vav, without a vav? So look at this. So he tells me there's a chidushim cheshik shloima. Now, I asked him, it's cheshik shloima. This, Yotzei HaChacham, we got about 50 cheshik shloimas. But this is at the back of the Vilna Shas. You've got all of those hagors from various Gedolei Yisrael. So this Shloima was a Rav of Vilna at some period, and he, at the beginning of Sukkah, or Gemara Sukkah, he's addressing why is it in the Shas Sukkah is spelled with a vav, whereas in Tanakh, Chumash is spelled without a vav. And you've got Basukkos, but that's the end. But the Sukkos is spelled Samach Kof Vav Tov. Why do they in Chazal? Why do they use it with a vav? Then he goes further. I have a problem. If it's not just printers. In the Arizal's writings in Pri Etz Chaim, he says Sukkah with Samach Vav Chav Hey. Samach is 60, Chav is 20. That's 80. Plus Vav and Hey is 6 and 5 brings it to 91. So that's Gematria Tzadik Aleph, and that is Gematria of 26 plus 65. Yud K Vav K is 26. Aleph Dal Nun Yud is 65. 65 and 26 equals 91. So the Arizal has got a Gematria. So the Vav is not just So he says where, and he says I saw this, and I went, where do you have Sukkah written with a Vav? And then I saw in Tehillim I involve Sukkah is written by Hibeshal, and Sukkah is written with a Vav. Now he goes into a fascinating svara, and you have the idea that it says in Chumash with the battle with Amalek, Ki Yod al Case Yud K Milchomo Lashem Ba'Amalek Mider Der. That Hashem has sworn at the moment his name is incomplete, the throne is incomplete. Lased Lovoi will be Hashem Sholem Akise Sholem. So now look at this. So he says the following: Noida b'Yehuda Elikim. There'll be a time will be greatness. Noida b'Yehuda Elikim. B'Yisrael Godel Shemoi. His name will be great. Vayhi b'Sholem Sukkoi with a vav. That Hashem's name will be complete. So when Sukkah, I know it hits with two vavs. When Hashem's name is spelled Samach Vav, when Sukkah is spelled Samach Vav Chav Hey, then it's Hashem Sholem. Then it's Gematria Havaya Adni. At the moment, it's spelled Samach Chav Hey, so it's Ein Hashem Sholem. So therefore, generally in Tanakh, in Chumash, we're not yet there. Ein Hashem Sholem. Therefore, Sukkah is spelled without the Vav. But when it will be Vahi B'Sholem Sukkah, Leosid Lovoi, there will be Hashem Sholem, and then Sukkah will be spelled Samach Vav Chav Hey. That's his fascinating drush over here. That's from this Cheshik Shloima. Then he also connects with when we say Ufroi Solenu Sukas Shloimecha, which we say by Ma'ariv. So again, we're looking forward to the time will be with Sukkah will be Sholem, will be La'asid Lovi will be complete, and that will be Samach Vav Chav Hey. Then he also refers me to the same writer. He refers me to a very much contemporary sefer, which goes into much more detail about this, and on the same theme, the idea of at the moment Sukkah is Hashem's name, but it's incomplete. And La'osed Love, it will be complete. And that's okay. So much for that. So fascinating stuff. By the way, he also throws in how Malach, the word Malach, is also 91. But he says on one Shabbos, it was Shabbos Mevorachim Sivan. So he was thinking by Birchas HaChodesh, when we say Lichatsheu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Aleinu, L'Toiv L'Vrocha L'Geula, where he has Nula Kroiv in his Girsa, V'Noimar Omein. So it should be, the Geula should be, that it should be Omein, that there shall be, Sukkah will be spelt with a Vav Chof Hey, and it will be Hashem Sholem. But the Noimar Omein will be the 91, because that's the Gematria of Havaya Adni coming together. All right. Let's move on. So now, I don't know how much time we have, but here we have another davening question, and that is, I mentioned this a while ago. I can look at my index, it was a good few years ago, and we had the discussion, why do we have Chazaras Hashatz? And you read the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, at the end, it talks about, it's Kadesh lahazdir shias liach tzibot tfilose. Chazaras Hashatz, sorry, it's Lahotz Shei Boki. He has the Chazan says a quiet Shemon to kind of rehearse, and the large Shemon is for the Eine Boki. So we have in every from community, we have every day Chazaras Hashatz twice, and that's only Lahotz Shei Boki, because years ago, there were those illiterate people who were able to understand Hebrew but not able to daven. So we have a Chazaras Hashatz to be moed to them. They're not here anymore. The illiterate people are not there altogether in shul, and even if they are in shul, they don't understand Hebrew. They're not yet in any case. But we do a Chazaras Hashatz to be moed to them. It's a little bit difficult to accept. And then also we have the emphasis of following along and what's it all about. So and it's something which has bothered me for years. And in passing, I was looking for something else, and I found in the Siddur Shalom he has Tam Chazoros Hashatz Hatfilah. Why does the Chazan have to repeat the davening? And he brings from Reb Moshe Cordovero, who's his commentary on the Siddur. There's a Siddur Tefillah Moshe, and he discusses this. And he says how the Tefillah Sayochid is a yichud, but it's incomplete, and the yichud which is needed is only going to be completed when you've got also the Chazaras Hashatz, and he talks about Hamshocha upwards and Hamshocha downwards, and these are coming together through the Tfilas HaYochid and the Chazaras Hashatz. That brings the Yichud in a more complete way. I know it's Kabbalah language. That's okay. As it says now, Yom Yom, and you know that there are things that you're learning in Nigla. You know that it's got a much in Gan Eden. It's been learned with much greater depth. But there's one other thing which I want to just share with you, and he talks about the 18 brachos of Tefillah, and he connects it with the drapes on the Mishkan. And it's got here the two sets of drapes. The lower ones were 5 and 5, the upper ones were 6 and 5, and then so he could somehow connects the brachos of Tefillah with the drapes, with the number of drapes, and then you've got the hooks, the 50 copper hooks or gold hooks are holding them together, and he somehow connects this, that the Chazaras Hashatz is like the connecting and holding together Netzach on one side and Hoid on the other side, and then Yesod is connecting in the middle. That's the Chazaras Hashatz. And okay, again, it's Kabbalah, but meanwhile it's just also giving you another insight a little bit, that the hooks on the drapes of the Mishkan also have got a much deeper kavanah than just upholstery or drapes, etc. Right. So someone asks, the question came up this week about why do we say boire pri adoma, boire pri ha'etz, boire pri ha'gofen, boire min v'shomim, and shakol niya b'dvari? Why not shakol bora b'dvari? So this is written in the Abu Darham as a pioneer biur tefillah. He quotes Reb Osher of Lunel. Lunel is a town in France, and this Reb Osher Lunel is mentioned in Tosfos, somewhere in Baba Basra. I checked it up in Seder Adoros. And Reb Osher Lunel asked the question, why other brachas is it boire, and here it's nihiyor, it came to being. Why not hakol bora, which we actually have by the Sheva brachas under the chuppah, etc. And he says, because this bracha of shahakol nibedvarei includes food which don't grow from the ground, like animals. And he says, "Iku briosum loikachoisum." Animals were not created for eating. That wasn't the original creation. The proof to this is that Adam HaRishon was not allowed to eat meat. So that fascinating thing is saying that animals were created. Well, perhaps oxen were there to plow, sheep were there to give you wool. I don't know what goats are made for. I don't know. Perhaps to mow your lawn. Perhaps I don't know. I don't know. To give you milk could be. But he's saying that the reason why we don't say Hashem bara, because Hashem created them not for eating. Later, after the Mabul, Hashem gave Noach the mitzvah, the heter to eat meat. That's one explanation. That's why it's not bara. The second reason is that the bracha of shahakol is also addressed in the Mishnah for vinegar, which is wine which has gone sour, bread which has gone moldy, and noivlos. I think that's windfall and fruit, which are not good quality. So things which are not up to scratch. So not they el hashchosa v'hafsoda sabria. They are where good things have been ruined. And therefore, we won't say boire. Hashem doesn't create ruined stuff. So therefore, nihio, it happened. It developed that way. So these are the excellent reasons given in the Abu Darham that Hashakil, because this is not the purpose of its creation, and therefore we say nihio. That's how it developed, but that wasn't the original purpose of creation. So I thought I'd share that with you. And we have now just a couple of minutes. And so I want to share with you someone in the United States sent me this. Probably thinks I've got a certain interest in Sidurim. Wonder why. And he sends me this copy. Have I ever heard of this copy? Seen it? I'm interested. So you can see it's printed in Vilna, Ayin Gimel. So that's 1913, I think, and it's called Seder Shlosa de Yisrael. Now, there is a volume published about 20 years ago called Hasidur. It's published in, I think, Tov Reish Samach Gimel. Tov Shin Samach Gimel. It was published as to celebrate the 200 years since the Alter Rebbe published his Siddur. And there they have also a librarian, whatever, professor by the name of Yudilov from Yerushalayim, and he made a list of prints of the Alter Rebbe Siddur which are unknown from Tovkuf Samach Gimel until 1960, till Tov Shin Chof. He lists some 260 or 280 prints from the Alter Rebbe. So, this is more than one print a year in all this time. And during this period, 1913, you're talking about that the Rom printing house, they published several editions of the Arizal Siddur. What I'm saying, that list of Yudilov does not have this. He doesn't know about it. So this is a very rare copy of this print, as far as I know. And you can see it has here a stamp, Yeshivas Tomchet Mimim Behalein. Now, after the war, so you have the Lubavitch refugees coming out of Russia with the echelon and with the smuggling through the border, and they were concentrating basically in two areas. One was a refugee camp in Pocking in Germany. That's my parents were there, and then you had another one in Austria by a place called Hallein. Perhaps there were more, but this is Yeshivas Tomchet Mimim Behalein. So that's a stamp when at some stage whoever owned it put the yeshiva stamp on it, and then you got some inscriptions of family yortzites, etc. The one who sent me this copy, so he says in that siddur, it has le'elo lo Yosif al kosayde kore, and he remembers his father telling that the word Yosif rather than Yosif is inaccurate. So that part I can weigh in. In my recently published siddur, there is a comment about that in the first print of the Alter Rebbe Siddur in Shklov Tavkuf Samach Gimel, it has actually Lo Yosiv with a comma with a shavah. But there are other Siddurim which are printed indeed with the commas, and you have the posuk in Daniel where it has the word Yosiv. They say perhaps that was in the past tense, but this is in present tense. Therefore, they change it to Yosiv to Yosif. But okay. Either way is good. My policy is whatever's written in the Siddur, just go along with it. Okay, I'll wish you all a wonderful Shabbos and Yehovchu Yom Elu L'Salsin L'Simcha, and we should see a Geula Shlema, Mashiach Tzidkenu, and Malkeinu Bereshenu.
Have good Shabbos.